Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Whatcha Watching right here on the Hollywood Critics Association YouTube page, Facebook page, Twitter page, Twitch page, whatever page, some sort of page. And we're very excited today because we have an awesome group for you, and we have two new HCA members joining us for the first time for this episode. I would like to first and foremost introduce one of them. We're going to start with Mr. James. How are you, James?
Hello, Scott. I am good. Thank you very much. And thank you kindly for letting me into this little fun group here.
Oh, no problem at all. We're happy to have you. And I say this on every single show. I can't wait for the day that we actually can be all in a room again once again.
That would be nice. That would be nice. It's a little weird to meet the members of your Critics Association just through video screens, but, you know, times must, and this is what we do right now.
Awesome. So, James, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and where they can find you?
Yeah, I am British. I don't know. I think that comes across in the accent. I've been living in LA for about 15 years, and I am the West Coast editor, open brackets, online, close brackets, for Empire magazine, one of the UK's best and biggest, and possibly one of the most famous film magazines in the world, which is kind of an honor and kind of a pleasure. And I write about all sorts of stuff on their website and in the magazine. I also write for a couple of other science fiction type magazines, and I do press notes and things like that for studios when they're actually holding junkets where people can, you know, show up and talk to each other without coughing and everything like that. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Great. Let's move on to Anthony. Hi, Anthony. Also brand new to the organization this year. Same drill. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm just pretty much a movie geek like everybody else. I grew up watching movies, tried to do anything I could to turn it into a hobby. So I just cover films, written and video, do a lot of stuff all on the silverscreenanalysis.com. So if you guys ever are interested, just come by and check it out.
Awesome. And then, of course, this man needs no introduction. Mr. Rama of Rama Screen.
What up, what up? As you can tell from my accent, I am not British, but I'm a big fan of British accent. And this is my third year member of Hollywood Critics Association, movie freak, rock music lover, Arsenal Football Club fan. So good to be talking movies with you guys.
Awesome. All right. So normally how this show goes, if you've seen one of the previous 3 episodes, is that we would jump in and I would just keep saying, what you watching, over and over again. But today, I feel it's our duty as a critics organization to touch upon a little bit of news that happened today. And there was actually 2 pieces of news that I would like to just briefly address. And the first, of course, is the Oscars. So we've been talking about this. It's been like a topic of conversation amongst all of us and people on Twitter and Facebook and in the industry. What the hell is going to happen to award season this year? And I think the Academy gave us our answer. And that is we are going to see a whole bunch of movies go to streaming if they want to be considered for an Academy Award this year. I'm curious if we could just go around real quick. We can start with Anthony this time. What's your feelings when you read this? What's your feelings about this whole situation?
Actually, I kind of liked it. I think it's a good idea. You have to change with the times. We're going to have so many months without a lot of movies in the theaters, especially this is happening during like the peak of just the blockbuster tentpole movie season. So just to see, all these movies going to streaming, I think is a good idea. I think it's going to still be able to, give a lot of these Oscar potential movies into the eyes of just people that need to watch them. So it's kind of an adaptable situation right now. And I think that's kind of what you have to do.
Awesome. How about you, Rama? What's your thoughts?
Well, yeah, it's understandable, considering the occasion that we're in right now. And I think for movies like F9, not being considered for this year's award, they'll be like, we'll be fine. We're gonna move to next year. But most award consideration movies are sort of like streaming quality as opposed to like big screen quality anyway. So it makes sense to me, and I'm all for it. I think the email says movies that are planned for theatrical release but then have to go to streaming. So this doesn't apply to like Netflix, the half of it, or a Danger Slice, Netflix movies. So, but yeah, it's understandable.
Awesome. How about you, James? What's your take?
Yeah, well, you know what it means. Obviously, Trolls World Tour for Best Picture, the dream is still alive. But obviously, I think it's a smart move because, like Rama was saying, there are a lot of movies that would normally sort of sometimes they get lost in the shuffle on the big screen, and they'll get some more recognition when it comes to actual award season and get some exposure. And so many of those will probably clearly be going to streaming that if the rules then cut them out completely, you decimate the Oscar categories. You'd barely have any Oscar movies left over to consider. So I think this opening up is probably the best move they could have done right now. It just makes sense. It just makes pure sense for them to actually try this. And it's a special case. I doubt it'll stick for next year, depending on how things go with the world situation. But I think in this case, yeah, I think it's absolutely the right move.
Yeah, which is interesting because it kind of ties into this whole movement that's going on right now with film festivals going to online. Because to me, I was thinking like, as this is happening, I'm like, okay, so Sundance was lucky. It wound up getting past this. It didn't have to deal with it. South by was the first festival that got hit with it. Then Tribeca, Cannes, obviously no Comic-Con, not like that pertains to this, but like still like sometimes studios push movies there. And then I was thinking about like Telluride and TIFF and Venice. And I mean, 100%, I knew that Venice was not going to happen. Like Venice is done because Italy was impacted so heavily by this that I think they would be really, really like risking it just to run a film festival to do that. So that left all eyes on Toronto in a lot of ways. And Toronto came out, I think it was a week ago at this point, and said they want to do it, in Toronto, of course, but they were looking into online options. And I think this decision by the Academy is a confirmation that Toronto will happen and a lot of movies will debut there, but it's going to happen online because I don't think people, given this current structure that we're in, given the fact that now certain states are opening and we're seeing these people become guinea pigs, and it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to really see what the results are. I don't think we're still going to see a festival, but I think this basically paved the way for Toronto to kind of say, you know what, we need to do our festival online. And I think the Academy's smart. I think the Academy, by doing this online, they're going to still get a lot of these movies out there. They're going to be on good graces with the studios, and the studios are going to spend so much money now to get people to see these movies, because if you thought Netflix sent out a lot of swag the last couple of years, I feel like without them having to worry about theater, going into the theatrical runs and not playing in as many theaters, they're going to spend that money on a lot of swag for us and make sure that people know about their movie, which, like James pointed out, I think 9 times out of 10, most people don't know about most of the Academy movies. This last year was a weird thing where some people did because of like Joker, and everyone was talking about Parasite. But in previous years and in the majority of films, they're not movies that a lot of people talk about. So I'm very curious how this plays out and how many people are actually going to vote this year, given the fact that they're not going to have maybe that associated party or that associated event, which everyone loves. Like everyone goes to these events to take selfies and to say, I was the first person to see it. Everyone kind of being treated as equal. That should be a fascinating experiment also to see.
And if I may jump in, as far as the TIFF goes, I'm so bummed out. That's my
me too.
I love that film festival. I was like, that was my first time last year, and I fell in love with it. So, but I get it though. It seems like everything's gonna have to be virtual screening, virtual watch time. I haven't participated in the South by Southwest. Hey, watch the movies online thing. But that's how it's gonna be. And as far as the Academy, back to that again. The letter also said that once everything goes back to normal, the theaters go back to open, then the rule will go back to how it was. That the movie will have to have movie theater showing first, in order to qualify. So that I joked with Scott before the show. I was like, Steven Spielberg will be happy because he's like last year. Like he was all gung ho, but no, Roma cannot qualify. So I'm sure he'll be overseeing the fact that the rules get reversed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's kind of fascinating that it's kind of come to this, but the reality is and you got to think about this, like from the Academy standpoint, a lot of the Academy voters are older people too. And if they're the ones who are most affected by COVID-19, I know people our age who are like deathly afraid of going into a movie theater, which is why I ran a poll a couple weeks ago, like asking when people would come. And like, the responses were across the board. Some people, very small percentage, I think it was only like 10%, said like they would need to wait like over a year. And the majority was either a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And that's a huge window, because if the news outlets do their job, if people do really start going back out and they start getting sick again, we're going to be back to right where we are right now. We're going to be back to doing this. So it's really fascinating, but I think it's a smart move on the Academy, not just to make studios happy, but to really show that they care about those who vote. And I hope that other groups follow suit. I know, the studios are going to have to really come up now with spend the next couple of months of coming up with a really strong streaming platform, or maybe working together to just create a big screener link that they can kind of put them up and come up like Netflix, like just in different tabs. But I'm curious to see where this goes. It's a very unique time, but seeing where this goes is going to be fascinating.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then real quick, just want to jump into the other big news thing that happened today was, of course, there was the AMC debacle with Universal, where basically, because of this article that came out in the Wall Street Journal, where they said that they made more money through VOD for Trolls World Tour than they did for the first Trolls movie through regular theaters, that they were going to start basically adapting to a certain procedure where they would decide whether they want both to open up in theaters and at home the same day, or certain movies just to go theatrically, certain movies just to go VOD. And AMC basically said, nah, you're not doing that. We're not going to distribute any, or we're not going to show any Universal movies. Very curious, just again, real quick, what's your thoughts on this? Rama, start with you.
Man, so no Jurassic World 3 at AMC theaters? That's a bummer. I don't know how as big as my TV screen is, it just won't feel the same. But I get it. This is one of those I don't know what pissing contest, mano macho, ego battle. I get business standpoint wise. I totally understand where Universal's coming from. It's like, yeah, they make more money. It makes sense. But AMC also kind of, their anger is kind of justified as well. So I don't have a dog in this fight, but it's interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, James?
Yeah, it's sort of interesting because the way they expressed it was this gigantic open letter, this rambling sort of open letter, lots of businessy talk, lots of sort of diplomatic talk, almost saying, we've had a long and fruitful business relationship. We've always tried to work it out. It sort of felt like it's almost like a song, like asking an ex to come back in some ways. But it's all sort of, in corporatese and everything. We've done this, we've done that, we've reached out to you, we've tried to work with Windows. There was so many talk of Windows, you think Bill Gates was behind it. But it is kind of fascinating, and you do kind of see AMC's point, but then I know the studios have kind of been itching to collapse those windows for a while. So this, despite the fact that it's a very strange situation, feels like them sort of inching towards that and seeing what they can do. And obviously, this is the first real pushback. I know there was somebody from the National Association of Theatre Owners who gave a speech a while ago saying, this isn't on. We want to keep the window sacred. We want to keep doing this. But I honestly think it might nudge things a little bit. I think there might be an understanding, depending on how the other studios react now, because this might push back other studios' plans. There are several movies that are planned, like Scoob and things like that are being planned for straight to VOD. I think certain titles will be seen as, okay, you can go and take those. But if Universal hit back and said, right then, Fast and Furious 9 goes straight to video, straight to home entertainment, I think there might be a bit of movement on it. So honestly, I think we have to wait and see at this point. It's all still up in the air. I really do get the feeling I think Universal might try and come back and say, all right, look, we'll just keep doing theatrical in the future. But it's a really strange point. It's a really weird point at the moment, and it's just interesting how this has developed, and it's interesting to see AMC really coming out and saying no, you can't do this. That's it. You're out of the club. So I'm just fascinated to see how Universal responds right now, frankly.
Yeah. How about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm on like kind of with Rama. I see both sides of it. It's interesting. They definitely the studios seem to, or the theaters seem to draw their line in the sand. But I think like Fast 9 is going to be kind of that litmus test for each side to see, okay, those movies make so much money and so many people eat popcorn and soda and candy while watching those movies. So, I mean, it's kind of easy to do this stuff right now and say these things because there's no real movies on the forecast, but it's like, let's just see what Universal is going to do. I mean, there's still like Regal theaters, Edward chains. Are they going to say, okay, well, we'll just bypass AMC altogether? AMC is maybe not going to want to miss out on that money. So I'm really interested to see where things are going to go as we get closer to actual big movies coming out and being released. But yeah, it's a little bit of a shaky situation, especially for the studios. I mean, you understand their point. They want to make money off their projects. And it's like the theater chains are almost pricing a lot of people out of being able to go all the time. So, you kind of understand what they want to do. You understand what the theater, what their mindset is for that. But it's really going to be interesting just once these big movies start to come out, who's going to change their stance on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, my take on this is, Universal was the studio that kind of took the risk. And I know this is like, they have a long history kind of addressed in that letter that, they've been wanting to break this window for a very long period of time. It's been something that has been brought up many, many times before. But really, I mean, like, I talked about this on one of the previous shows that we did, but, all these movies come out. Like, there's so many movies that came out during quarantine. Like, this past month and a half, there's probably been about 40 to 50 different movies that came out. And no one knows about pretty much any of them besides maybe 4 or 5 of them. And it's amazing because these smaller movies were probably going to have a limited theatrical run, and yet no one cares about that. No one cares about all these movies being missed. No one cares because you know why? There's no money involved. But when it came to Trolls, and I think that was what made AMC so pissed off, is that they said, like, we made more money doing it this way than we did it this way. They were kind of like, well, that's a slap in the face to us because we've had this long-standing relationship. You made so much money with us over the years. But ultimately, what I think the answer is that each studio is going to have to be wise after this. Because there is a conversation, and we're not going to have it today, about whether or not all theaters are actually even going to come back and if they're all going to be successful with all the given content that's out there now and how many people have been turned on to all this different content. That being said, I think studios really need to sit down now and they need to look and they say, like, yes, Jurassic World needs to go into the movie theater. Maybe Trolls does not. And they need to go through their lineups and start forming a new marketing plan and a new way of marketing these movies that is not going to just go to theatrical releases. I'm also very curious of how this is going to affect junkets, but again, that's a conversation for another day. But I don't know. This right now, to me, I think all of you have kind of said it best. Is that it just seems to be like an ego-driven thing. Like who's bigger? You're both right. You're both wrong. So like, you probably should have had a conversation about this before going public about it. But at the end of the day, time will tell. Only time will tell. This is just everyone's acting in the heat of the moment. We'll see how mommy and daddy make up later.
Yeah, and people might not be rushing back out to the theaters, like you said, once they open up anyways. So, I mean, even if I still am going to have a little apprehension going into a movie, especially if I see the theaters just completely packed and I'm not at like a press screening or something like that. And I'm just going with some friends for recreation. It's going to be a little nerve wracking, and it's something that I'm going to have to think about. So there's lots of people that are going to be on that. So, I mean, the AMC really drove that point home with what their statement was, but they're not really sure people are going to come back regardless. So,
and the fact that they're on the verge of bankruptcy as it is, which is also that's also a very odd play right now. I can understand them kind of like keeping that in their back pocket if Universal tried to do this like something later down the road with a bigger title. But like right now, it's kind of like you should kind of get what you have, considering the fact that you're not really in a good position to bargain. But hey, that's my take.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving on now to the part of the show that the show is all about, the Whatcha Watching section. And since we all talked about everything and we all went around the circle already, we're going to go back to James. We're going to start with him. What is the first show or movie that you've been watching, James?
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is more on the small screen, and that is One Day at a Time, the newer version, the formerly Netflix, now Pop TV version of One Day at a Time, adapted, of course, from the 1975 sitcom partly by Norman Lear, who developed the original, and now by Gloria Calderon-Kellett and Mike Royce. And it's basically just a fun family sitcom. It's a real sort of throwback to I mean, there are still 3 or 4 camera sitcoms being made. Chuck Lorre does a lot of them, but this is just a really truly fun blast of family joy with a little bit of politics thrown in occasionally. They tackle issues. They'll tackle sexuality. They'll tackle Latino issues because it's a Latino family this time. It's Penelope Alvarez, played by Justina Machado, is basically raising her 2 kids as a single mom, holding down a job as a doctor's assistant, and also dealing with sort of her post-military issues because she's a veteran. And then most of the scenes when she appears are stolen by the legend that is Rita Moreno, who plays her mother, and is basically just show-stopping every time she walks out. She has these curtains. She lives with the family. She basically has taken over their dining room as her bedroom, and she has these curtains, and they just part like theater curtains every time she enters. And of course, the audience goes wild. And it's just a great old-fashioned sitcom of the type that, yes, are still made these days, but it's a really, really great example of it. The acting is fantastic. The jokes land. The heart and sentiment is right there, and the issues never feel like they're being plunged straight down your throat with a sink plunger. It's just so much fun. I just get so much joy watching it, and I was really sad when Netflix canceled it after 3 years, but that's Netflix for you these days, 3 years and done. And then Pop TV, of course, resurrected it, and they had a little shot at Netflix in the first episode, which was kind of fun, of the new season. Now, of course, it's slightly been impacted by the pandemic. They aren't able to shoot any new episodes, and they've literally just announced today that they're actually doing an animated special episode adapted from an episode they were planning to do, which was already going to do a little bit of fantasy scenes with some special effects on the live action show. Now they're turning that into an animated special, which could be even better, which could be amazing. There's just so much to recommend it. I mean, the cast are great. Obviously, Rita Moreno's great. Stephen Tobolowsky, the character acting legend, plays a sad sack hangdog doctor who's also Penelope's mother's sort of love interest, but he wants to be. She she doesn't really ever treat him that way. It's just a great show. I never watched the original. You don't have to have watched the original to really just get into the groove of this one. It's the same basic setup, but it does its own thing, and I just adore it. I just feel so happy when I'm watching it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So has anyone else seen this show? And if you have, do you recommend it?
Yes, I loved One Day at a Time. Big fan when it was on Netflix. Same with James. And I'm watching it, still now that it's on Pop TV. Then, like James said, it tackles political and sexuality stuff. The comedy is great, but sometimes the episode will also get serious. But it's not, in a way that like they would tackle topics that probably other shows would be like, oh, I don't know if we want to go there. One Day at a Time is like, yeah, we're gonna go there. So and Rita Moreno is hilarious, fantastic. My question is probably, now that it's on Pop TV, not Netflix, it hurts the show, right? Because it doesn't get a lot of eyeballs, and the fact that it's not bingeable, it's on a weekly basis. And what do you think, James?
I think a little bit. I think they've tried to offset that by sort of cross-platforming it across. It's instantly available on the Pop TV app once it's done, okay. And I think they also show it on TV Land and maybe one other associated channel to try and get a few more eyes. But no, you're definitely right. I think the audience will have taken a hit because people don't necessarily leap to the idea of Pop TV. I mean, Pop TV's got Schitt's Creek, or had Schitt's Creek until recently, and that's almost the only show I knew existed on Pop TV. I think One Day at a Time probably has done them a slight favor because it had an established fan base from Netflix who might come over to it. But no, I think you're right. I think it's probably going to be taking a ratings hit, and it'll probably struggle to get another season again. But to be honest with you, I'm just glad it's gotten this season, however many episodes we get, because I think the finale, or the truncated finale, is going to be this week because they're only able to shoot so many episodes. So I'm honestly just glad it's back. I'll take whatever they can give me, frankly.
I'm with you.
Awesome. All right, Anthony, for you, what's your pick?
Right now I'm watching, I finished watching a drama on Hulu called Little Fires Everywhere. It's based on the best-selling novel, and it's just the definition of juicy drama. I mean, if you want to escape from your life, you could just dive into the lives of these characters. You have this just very well-off, rich family that's living in this town, and Kerry Washington and her daughter kind of are like travelers, and they just show up into this town, start living there. The kids' lives start intertwining. Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington's characters, their lives start to really intermingle with each other, and it just really, if you want one of those dramas that just has a nice pace from one episode to the next, every story dynamic really does seem to kind of evolve at the same time. It's just great writing. It does a good job of just building up climactic, just confrontations between people, and so many times with like a lot of shows, you get these filler episodes or filler subplots and stuff that really don't play into the main narrative. But this one here, it's like every single moving piece really has an interest and a stake and an impact on where the story goes, and it's just like that perfect structuring of going from one episode to the next. It really knows how to time everything, and the performances are fantastic. I mean, Reese Witherspoon's great, Kerry Washington's great, even all the younger actors really do a great job. I mean, as watching this show as a person my age, I'm able to easily connect with the adult characters because I am their age, but just the natural authenticity from the young characters, the things that they have to deal with, the situations that their lives go through throughout the course of this series are really able to, you can kind of draw back to your childhood years and just connect with these characters. And it's really because all the child actors, or I wouldn't even call them child actors, or just teenage actors, they do a great job. They don't over embellish, they don't overact. It just feels very pure through all the moments. So you really are able to connect with everything. And a lot of times, if you have a series, there's certain story angles that you can really connect to more, and there's others that you're like, okay, it's not so bad. But this one here, all of it just keeps you invested from one scene to the next, and it's just so well crafted. So I mean, it's definitely one to check out if you just like to sit there with that bowl of popcorn on the couch and just watch these characters going back and forth with each other. You never really know where things are going to go, and since the writing is just very, it's very just sincere and authentic. It doesn't feel over embellished, and it's like just 100% drama without the melodrama, and it's fantastic.
Awesome. Did anyone else watch this show? Rama, you did?
Yes, I did.
This is one of those shows that is on my my backlog.
Me too.
Because every time I do one of these shows now, I just get another one gets added to the queue, and then there's new stuff that comes out that somehow jumps in front of it because it's a deadline for an embargo or for an interview. But go ahead, Rama. I'm curious to hear your take on this.
I'm with Anthony on this one. I loved it. It was so, like Anthony said, juicy. I mean, little fires everywhere. I haven't read the book. People say the book is amazing. The way it's your comfort gauge, like you feel uncomfortable, like whenever the show brings it up, and Reese and Kerry Washington, on the opposite ends of each other, they're versus each other. It's amazing, their performances. So it has a lot of cliffhanger at the end of every episode as well. That just makes your jaw drops. I loved it.
Okay.
Yeah, it really builds that anticipation for the characters meeting. Like, this child, this teenager and this teenager are going to end up having some kind of blow to each other. And then these two adult characters are going to do it. And you can just feel it ramping up to where once it finally happens, it's just the writing is great. And it really locks you in.
Yep.
I've been hearing such great things about this show, and I can't wait to watch it. Especially because I think after Big Little Lies season 2, which did not really hit the mark for most people, Reese needed a really good show to come back on. And from what I hear, this is a really good one for her. Brings me to my Netflix pick of the week, because I feel like everyone at least always picks something that was on Netflix or is going to be on Netflix or something. And I'm going to go with this little gem. Oh Hello on Broadway, which is comedians John Mulaney and Nick Kroll. And obviously this show actually premiered on Broadway a couple years ago. They did a special for Netflix because John Mulaney is huge on Netflix, probably the biggest stand-up comedian because of his specials on Netflix. And this was a little skit that was on the Kroll show, and they actually turned it into a whole little Broadway show that was big hit over in New York, and then they filmed it. I watched this again recently because obviously I've seen this before. There's a comfort about rewatching things during quarantine right now. I know we're all like, there's so much content out there, and I'm starting to get into a lot of the content now. I think it took me a little bit of time because at first I just wanted to know what exactly I was watching, and I wanted to feel like I knew what I could, I wanted to know what I could expect from something. So I was kind of like off of like trying out new things, but I just wanted to point out this one because I feel like this was a special that really kind of was underneath the radar. And if you're a John Mulaney fan or a Nick Kroll fan, this is just some of their best stuff. And the two of them, their chemistry and this whole gag of like one of them being two Jewish guys it's just fun. And I highly recommend it if you like their brand of comedy. If you don't like their brand of comedy, probably won't do much to change that. But if you like it, it'll definitely appeal to you. Anyone else see this?
I haven't.
Yeah, I did actually. I'm a big fan of both guys. It feels like they're dominating half of Netflix right now between Big Mouth and Sack Lunch Bunch and all that kind of stuff. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I really, the only thing I don't like about it is it makes me feel bad I never got to see it on Broadway or any of the other times they did it live, just to see the spontaneity of how it happens on stage. But it's fantastic. It's hilarious, and it's rude in places, and I love it. I love their stuff. I think they're very smart with it. I think they can push boundaries with their stuff at the same time, but they do it in such a good-natured way that it's hard to take offense, even if there is stuff that's massively offensive, but it's hilarious. So yeah, I love those guys, and I love that show. I think it's fantastic.
great. I don't know. John Mulaney, for some reason, is one of those people who I can watch over and over and over again. And him, Nick Kroll. Nick Kroll to me is like a little bit more hit or miss. I don't think he's had the track record that John Mulaney has had, but the two of them together is just like fire. Like they just bounce off one another so perfectly. And I cannot recommend the show enough if you're fans of those two. All right, Rama, what are you watching?
Woohoo! By the way, I'm gonna check out that. Thank you so much, Scott. I will definitely check it out. I loved Extraction movie on Netflix. It's one of the best action films I've seen in recent years. It's relentless, it's intense, and of course, everybody's talking about the long 11-minute, sort of like a one continuous shot in the middle of the movie. And the storyline is pretty thin. It's basically a chase film, kind of like Terminator 2 Judgment Day was a chase movie. So Chris Hemsworth trying to rescue this kid, and they're being chased by the other guy, and there's it goes from like a car chase, the truck chase, to knife fight, to gunfight, one after the next. This is when you thought that you're gonna get to take a pause or breather, something happens again. I read that Chris Hemsworth said that it was exhausting to shoot the film. I felt for him. Like I was watching, I was like I was watching Jack Bauer in season 1. Like I wish for him to get a power nap or something. It's like the guy just keeps on going. The heroes in this, like definitely Chris Hemsworth and his stunt double. But also, I grew up watching a lot of Bollywood movies in Asia. So to see, because they shot this on locations. They shot some of it in Thailand, but also a big chunk of it in India. This is India like I've never seen before. There's no singing and dancing, but there's still corrupt cops storyline, and it's just logistic-wise, it's fascinating. And Sam Hargrave is a stunt coordinator before this for Marvel movies. And Extraction is written by Joe Russo, as you know, one half brother of the Russo brothers, who gave us those Marvel movies. And of course, Chris Hemsworth is a Marvel star. So there's that. It's an embodiment of, like, in Hollywood, it's all about who you know. But Sam Hargrave is crazy. He would strap himself on the front of the car, holding a camera, just to get those angles, those perspectives that would, give you that sense of like feeling of immersive. And I loved it. The continuous shot, obviously, it's not, pure. It's kind of like Atomic Blonde, that stairway fight scene, which Charlize Theron. They make it to look like one continuous shot, but it was still seamless. So great, so badass to the bone, hardcore movie. I've watched it for about 9 times now, and I would watch for 9 more times.
Watch it the day.
Wow.
Exactly. So go check it out.
All right. Wow. Anyone else seen this one?
Yeah, I have. I completely agree with him. Chris Hemsworth is the human embodiment of the action figure, and that's exactly what he was in this movie. Like you were saying, you like to know what you're going to expect when you watch something. I was expecting this just to be a regular, plain, kind of just shoot 'em up action movie. And after about 15 minutes or so, you could kind of tell that it's going to be a little bit something else. And it doesn't shut off. It doesn't take its foot off the gas until the movie's over. So, yeah, the characters are very thin. The storyline is very thin. It's just kind of like that real-time action thriller. But the way that they shot that film, the way they choreographed that action, it made it, very entertaining.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
James, did you see that one?
That one I haven't. It's near the top of my list to see. I'm a huge fan, particularly of Sam Hargraves. I've loved all of his stunt work. I got to talk to him for Atomic Blonde, for the fact that he's the guy who dies at the start. They, gets crunched by the car at the start and everything, and that's his acting role, but is also mostly his stunt role and everything. And he's a fantastic guy. He's part of the 8711, stunt team, who's done loads of Marvel stuff. They've done the John Wick stuff, obviously, which seems very reminiscent of lots of hard crunching action. And to be honest with you, just the fact that Hemsworth plays, I think the character's name is Tyler Rake. I think, which is just straight out of the 1980s action movies. That's,
Fantastic.
Edward Stone, Hard Charger, that kind of stuff. And I think he does actually kill someone with a rake at one point, which is fantastic.
Yes.
So, it's
The
a
best
triumph.
line.
It's a triumph.
The best line in the movie is there's this scene where he takes like these bunch of kids that are in this gang try to attack him and the kid that he's trying to free. And after he takes them all out, he radio comes in and is like, "We just got attacked by the Goonies from hell." It's just a great line.
This is I got to be honest. This is the first time that I heard some glowing reviews. I feel like the buzz on this one is actually kind of mixed. I feel like a lot of people have said that, like, if you like the action aspect of it, it's good, but then everything else about it is not good. But what I'm getting from you two is that even though the story is a little weak and the plot, not the plot, but the characterization is not that strong either, it's still, the action is so top notch that it actually doesn't matter as much.
Yes, and the movie does what it's supposed to do. And I think, I don't know if one continuous shot is the trend now after 1970, but it seems like, okay, let's apply it on action. Maybe we'll see one continuous shot on Bridget Jones' Diary 3. I don't know. But it as far as action goes, just one final thought. Like I said, it does what it's supposed to do, and I think if we did not have this COVID global pandemic, just like Triple Frontier and Bright, I think Netflix would have released this in theaters at least 2-week window, because it was made to be on the big screen, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I based on what I hear from everyone, I would agree with that statement. Obviously I didn't see it, but I definitely, based on the rumors and all the conversation I heard, that's what I would think too. All right, so going back, let's go to James. What's your second pick?
Yeah, my second pick is digging back into the archives. A film I've watched, I don't know, possibly 100 times, maybe more than that, and that is Airplane, the classic Zucker film. A gag a minute, a gag a second in certain parts of it. It's just the sort of movie that you could almost study as a perfect example of that sort of farcical knockabout comedy with just smart stuff in the background, stupid stuff in the foreground, and then it switches. And if people don't know what it is, it's basically a huge spoof of big disaster movies that essentially plays everything straight, but it's ridiculous. And it's the most ridiculous things happen. There's an inflatable backup pilot who just is basically, he's slightly pervy, let's be honest. And there are some amazing sort of actors. There's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in it, for crying out loud. There's Robert Hayes. There's Julie Haggerty. There's Leslie Nielsen, who of course we all love as Frank Drebin. And this was sort of really some of his earlier stuff with the Zucker Abrams guys, just playing it absolutely dead on straight. But what people are saying is ridiculous. What's happening around them is ridiculous. And I absolutely adore the film because there's something about it that will just make me laugh every 5 minutes. And if there's stuff in it that maybe hasn't aged as well as other things, then there'll be something along in the next 2 minutes to make you laugh again in some other way. There's just whole sequences that absolutely just make me fall over laughing, and I can't get enough of it. That and its sequel, frankly, which absolutely plays straight to my space nerdiness with the space shuttle and William Shatner and everything else like that. But Airplane, the original, it's a classic. It's on Amazon. I think you can rent it on Amazon. I don't know if it's on Prime just to get, but I would highly recommend renting it, buying it. You'll want to buy it anyway, because I can't recommend it highly enough.
Needless to say, every single one of us has seen this movie, right? Because if you're in this critics organization and you have not, I might have to think about that. Yes. This is a movie that I think this was one of the first movies to really showcase what a great parody spoof movie was all about. And you had all these great iconic actors show up in this film, whether it was for a small cameo appearance or a lead role. And they just, every single one of them just knocked it out of the park. And the Zuckers, this really made them a household name, and they did fairly well for almost like a decade or two after this movie because they knew the formula and they kind of stuck with it, you know? I think the movies that they were parodying started to get weaker and weaker, which is why the movies themselves that they were making were not as strong in the later years. But they really are the grandfathers, the godfathers of this genre. And I adore this film. I own it on Blu-ray. I own it on DVD, and I added it to my Vudu collection like 2 weeks ago because this is one of those movies that deserves to be owned in as many formats as you can have.
Definitely.
Agreed.
What do you think of the movie, Anthony?
I haven't seen it in a long time, but I completely agree. It's equally witty and clever as it is ridiculous and absurd, and the two blend together perfectly. It's one of those ones where I can laugh at the same joke no matter how many times I've heard it, and I know the joke and I know the bit is coming, and I can laugh at it again just because of, like you said, the way they play it on the nose. And from the cameos to the character performances, it's a classic. This genre for me is like I either love these movies or I don't like them at all.
Yep.
This is definitely one of those ones that I love and I also own for my home collection just to have it on anytime,
Awesome. Hey, James, were you going to say something? Did I cut you off earlier?
No, I was just going to say it's interesting how the genre kind of faded away for a long time because it felt like people couldn't do it well. You started getting those things like epic movie and not another teen movie type stuff, which they tried to sort of replicate that form. It never quite worked. The one thing I think that's done it decently in more recently, I think, was that show Angie Tribeca. I don't know if you guys watched that, but
pick.
Rashida Jones starring in a cop it's a cop comedy, and that was a really good sort of a version of that kind of comedy. I really enjoyed that show when it was on, and it didn't exactly get the highest viewership in the world, but it was just a really good version of that. And it was just interesting to me how it was really high around the times of Airplane and Police and Naked Gun from Police Squad, everything like that. Then it kind of went it went into hibernation for a while, tried to come back with the teen movie stuff and all that epic movie nonsense, and now it's sort of people sort of know how to do it, but it's only occasionally happens because it's a very tough formula to crack. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, I would also just like to add, thank you for pointing out Angie Tribeca, which also was, I think it was Steve Carell and his wife were the minds behind that.
Yeah.
Probably why it was so good at what it was doing. But also I got to give a shout out to a show that was on Adult Swim. And then there's a one season that's on Netflix that Netflix like literally has not even like put any money behind publicity or what at all. The first show that was on Adult Swim was called Children's Hospital.
Ah, yes.
And the show that I'm talking about on Netflix is called Medical Police.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a spin-off. Again, nobody probably watches either one of those shows. But again, great comedic actors in those shows doing like the parody thing, and I think it's just some of the funniest stuff out there. It reminds me of like the old Police Squad stuff, but sadly, because of the epic movie and date movie, disaster movie, and all those damn movies, I think it really destroyed the genre, and I don't think people are willing to give it another chance yet. They still like getting that bad taste out of their mouths.
Yeah, it's true.
So, all right, Rama, what's your second pick?
All right. So I was gonna pick another thing, but it's still under embargo. So I picked Defending Jacob. It's a new series on Apple TV Plus that premiered this past Friday, I believe. And so it's a murder mystery based on William Landay's book. All episodes are directed by Morton Tildum, the guy who gave us The Imitation Game. Oscar-nominated director Morton Tildum. And what's funny is that I mentioned in my review that Apple TV Plus has Truth Be Told with Octavia Spencer, it has Home Before Dark with Jim Sturgis, and now it has Defending Jacob. All three are murder mysteries, and all three are basically about trying to prove somebody's innocence. So it's interesting. Maybe Apple TV Plus wants to make this like their staple or something. Like we're the murder mystery outlet. So this one is about two parents, and the kid has been accused of murdering his classmate. And so the big chunk of the story is set between the court arraignment and the trial. So the several weeks within that, that's where the story lies. Even though the title is Jacob, Defending Jacob, Jaden Martell's character, it's actually mostly about the parents. Chris Evans and Michelle Dockery's characters, how they deal with society looking at them differently because of their child, how they cross certain moral lines to defend their child, to be protective of him, to how they really do whatever they can basically as parents, because parents would go to distance for their kid, and so that's basically the big chunk of it. And I love it because the story really makes me invested in those two characters, and the whole time I did not see Steve Rogers or Lady Mary, you know what I'm saying, from Downton Abbey, Michelle Dockery's character. So I was like surprised how Chris and Michelle really, their performances are really mature, and they're really emotional and really deeply affecting. My only disappointment is that there were no clear, conclusive resolve at the end. And that kind of sucks because this is a limited series. It's not a series regular. I don't think we're gonna get a season 2. So there was never actually an answer to whether or not the kid is guilty. But I guess if I'm too stressed over that, maybe I'm missing the point, because it's all about trying to deal with this emotional struggle that the parents go through. At least that's the big chunk of it. So I still liked it though, but if only it had a more conclusive ending.
Anyone else see this one?
Nope. No, definitely on the watch list though.
yeah, I want to see it. I don't know, the appeal of Cap with the beard again. I know it's not Cap, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's Chris Evans with the beard, looking serious, doing law. I really want to see it. I've heard mixed things about it. I've heard that it doesn't quite hold up in terms of the plot and the dynamics, but I'm intrigued to see it. It's a big swing by Apple again, another one that they've done, and I do wonder whether the world needs another story about who we're going to investigate, who this kid killed who, or this person killed who. But I'm intrigued to see it. I'm intrigued to see the cast seems great, and I really want to watch it. I just literally haven't had the chance. There is too much TV.
Yeah, no, there's too much stuff to watch. That's what I'm saying. Like when people are like, "There's not enough stuff to watch," I'm like, there is way too much. Like honestly, like everything could shut down for like a couple months. Like there's so much stuff to watch and catch up on.
Saturated.
Yeah. Oversaturated, way oversaturated. And it's funny, what I just wanted to point out real quick. So Rama, you made the joke about like them doing the mystery thing.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Netflix with the romantic comedy thing.
Yeah.
Like they bread and butter. That's their thing now. Like they do romantic comedies. So Apple's like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do mystery shows. Got them down. Let's bring back Columbo next.
And the guy that Netflix always casts, Noah.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? I honestly, I'm interested in this show, especially after watching Home Before Dark, because I didn't expect to like that show. But man, that show got so good, and I got really into it to the point where I was just so addicted to it. So I didn't hear as strong of word of mouth on this show as I did for that one, but I'll still check it out. All right. So Anthony, what is your second Whatcha Watching pick?
My second pick is Sergio on Netflix, starring Wagner Moura and Ana de Armas. It basically follows Sergio Vieira de Mello. He was the UN diplomat that was assigned to Baghdad right after the U.S. invasion of Iraq. And It's a great movie. At times, it's kind of like one of those ones where I was going in expecting this to be more of a just traditional biopic covering this man's career as he kind of went into Baghdad and stuff. But it brings in Ana de Armas's character. It really focuses a lot on their love life. I guess since we're just talking about Netflix and they like their love stories, this one does spend a lot of time focusing on their relationship dynamics. This is supposed to be his last assignment to go into Baghdad. Then he's going to basically retire from the UN, and of course it got bombed, and so it does. It kind of has a fractured timeline. It starts at one point, it goes back to the other. It kind of does both flashbacks for his career as well as some of his and de Armas's relationship. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to love it. I think I was going into this one expecting to see more of just who this man was and what his career was, and it touches on that, but it also spends a lot of time on their relationship. So, I mean, if you're want to see something that has a tinge of that, government biopic formula to it, but also does have a very layered love story to it as well, then it's definitely one to check out. It kind of left me with a little bit of mixed feelings at the end, but then once I started thinking about it more, I was like, okay, I really was able to connect with these characters. Mora was able to kind of shed that Pablo Escobar mold that he had from Narcos. I was really worried if he was going to be able to embody this character, and he really did. And him and de Armas, they had a great chemistry with one another. It just depends on if you are going into this one expecting that just government layered storyline and stuff with the terrorists and more stuff with Baghdad, then you're going to be a little bit disappointed when it veers off of that and starts talking about their relationship, how it built up and stuff. That's where some of the dialogue gets a little bit theatrical, to where it just feels a little melodramatic at times. But overall, despite being a different movie than I was expecting it to be, I was entertained by it.
Awesome. I gotta say that this one is the one movie that I actually have not heard anyone give this a glowing recommendation.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, this was the show. This was the movie that Netflix put out, and they did this with like a series of other movies. They did like a bunch of virtual junkets together for this movie. It was like this one and Love, Wedding, Repeat, which I know Rama is a huge fan of. He loved that movie. He thought that was the greatest movie ever for Netflix. And there was like one other show or movie that they did around the same time. They were doing it on a Thursday and a Friday, but this was the one where I thought like a lot of people were really going to talk a lot about it, especially because of Ana being in Knives Out and being this really big thing now. I have not heard really any glowing reviews on this at all. Yours review was actually probably one of the most kindest ones that I've heard, to be honest with you. But, I think maybe it's the fact that people were expecting one thing and then it really turned out to be another. I don't know. I mean, that's what I love about movies, and that's what I love about being a critic and like talking to people about movies, is that everyone kind of sees things differently and has different opinions. So I loved your take on this. I don't know if this is one that I'll be jumping to see anytime soon, but
No. And de Armas did a great performance, and Ragnar Mora was great as well. But when the story veers off and starts focusing on their relationship, it kind of inhibits the viewer from getting to know what this man's intentions were. It gives him the impression of being slightly self-righteous and more about how he feels and putting his workers in danger. It doesn't spend enough time on those story elements to give you a clear picture of what motivated this man and who he was, which kind of just gives the whole movie a slight surface level vibe to it. But like you said, or like I mentioned, de Armas was great, and the chemistry with Mora was really good too. So it was enough to carry it. It's not one that I'll probably ever watch again, though.
Awesome.
I watched it too, and you made good points there. At first I thought it was like, when I was watching it, it's like, oh, this is kind of like Casablanca, like romance in the middle of war, But it got a little too heavy on the romance and too drawn out. So I gotta agree with you on that. And this premiered at Sundance. You didn't see this at Sundance, Scott?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it must have been something where they didn't even like push that hard, because I don't even remember it premiering there.
No problem. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
just strange. But I mean, there's so many movies that come out at Sundance that, like, unless they play either at the library or the Eccles, those are usually like the two really big theaters there. And if your movie doesn't really play in one of those two theaters, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be a really big talk of Sundance unless it's something like controversial. The movie that I can think of that was like that was that weird Escape from Tomorrow or whatever the hell that was, that Disney movie where they filmed illegally in Disney, which definitely did not hold up and was not very good. I think everyone was just more interested in the gimmick and the fact that someone got away with something they shouldn't have gotten away with. But like that movie was not very good. And I remember seeing that at Sundance and I was like, this is what everyone's talking about? Really? Okay. But yeah, that's what happens at Sundance, and definitely even at like Toronto. I mean, now you've been to these festivals, the venues where they premiere at, it definitely say something about, I guess, the way that the programmers feel the movie's going to play out and what type of audience is going to discover it. They know which ones to put into the bigger theaters and which ones to put into the smaller theaters. So there's a trick to the trade, I guess. My last pick, and I'll make it really quick because I know we're running a little bit over on time. This is not a new show. This is a show that's still going. It just finished its 4th season. The show I want to talk about is This Is Us. This is a fascinating show for me because the first season and the second season, like, I deeply loved with all my heart and soul because I'm a fan of Mandy Moore. I grew up with her music and seeing her live, and she had like this whole like little indie songwriting career that she did, and like album that like no one knew about. And I remember seeing her live, and I always loved her. I always thought she was adorable, and I loved her as an actress. And but for me, the main draw of this show was, of course, the family, being like foster parents and adopting kids and all that stuff. And that really connected with me because I don't remember seeing that a lot on television shows, told in such an authentic way, the way that This Is Us tells that story. As the seasons have gone on, we go into the 3rd season and the 4th season. The show has become very like hit or miss for me. Some weeks I'm like really into it, I'm really engaged, and I love the characters. And then other weeks I'm kind of like, oh my God, like this is so dramatic, I'm over this at this point. It's very interesting because there's like so many new characters that they keep introducing into the show. Like, oh, here's an uncle. Oh, here's somebody else. Again, some of them work, some of them don't work. Some of them, they kind of feel like side characters that should be main characters. And it's kind of gotten that point where I think the show really needs to have like one more season, and they need to really wrap it up, and it needs to be a strong finish. But I think a lot of people who really not grew up, but like started watching this from the very beginning are starting to feel like fatigue from this show, even though there are some really, really strong episodes and some really heavy hitting, depressing episodes. And the performances, when they want to be killer and epic, I mean, some of the performances by Mandy Moore and Sterling K. Brown, top notch, like Oscar, Emmy caliber, whatever, like really that great. It's just that the show in like I said, in these last 2 seasons has been more like one episode's really great, one episode's and it's very hard to make a consistent show and kind of engage me. So like I can be really hooked on the end of one episode, and then I'll watch the next one and I'll be kind of like womp womp. And it's a strange thing because I started off loving this, and I have kind of like this love-hate relationship with the show now because certain things work for me, certain things don't work for me. But again, I think it's just a sign of a show that's kind of coming to the end of its rope, and it kind of needs to end. But I'm curious, anyone else here watch this show? Has anyone else seen this show besides me?
Yeah, I've been a fan of the show from the start. But I think my feeling has developed a little bit along the same way that yours has, in that From the beginning, I was all in on most of the characters. I thought Sterling K. Brown became a star off this thing and deserves to, because he knocks it out the park every single time he's on screen. He's just great. Even if the material he's given isn't perhaps as great as he once got, he's still fantastic. And then there are storylines where if it's say a Sterling K. Brown or a Mandy Moore or something else sort of storyline, I'll be like, yes, I'm all in. I really want to see what happens with this. Other stuff, the Justin Hartley Kevin character and the Kate character, less so. There are certain times where I just think the Kevin stuff is just, oh, look at him, he's so privileged and handsome and he sleeps with ladies, and then he has a bit of a cry and he's an alcoholic. I don't really care, and I want to care. I really do. I want to care about this family because I've seen it from the start, but there are moments where I think to myself, it's gone off the boil. They haven't found the magic formula. And it's interesting that they started out being very much about the reveals. It was it turns out that it's the same family that we're seeing across these different timelines, and what's going to happen, what happened to the dad. Spoiler alert, not so great. It's very much sort of that sort of stuff, and it feels like now they're just mostly doing like you said, Scott. It's like, here's another family member, or hey, we've just jumped 20 years in the future, and this is such and such a son, and this is such and such a daughter, and this is how the story might continue. But it's such a huge hit, and it's been fascinating to see how NBC in particular and several other channels have tried to replicate it.
Oh yes,
most of them have been one-hit wonders, and that's stretching the term one hit and wonder. So it's interesting that it became such a huge sensation. I feel like it's died off a little bit, but I still enjoy it. I still get pleasure from it. It's not what it once was, and I think it might still have. Doesn't it still have 2 years left?
I think it does, which is
at least a year.
I don't know. Like it's really hard to figure out if I'm going to be able to make it through to the end at this point.
It'll be fine. They'll just reveal that they're all in purgatory after all, and it'll be fine.
Well, James, it's so funny that you pointed that out, because you addressed the exact two characters that I have the issues with.
Yeah.
So it's not just me, because I'm always on board for Sterling K. Brown's character. Mm-hmm. I'm always on board when Milo, whatever his name is on there with Mandy Moore. I'm always on board for that. It's when the Kate and what I forgot her Toby, when the drama between them is like enough whining, and then just Kevin, like, I like that actor because I think he's very, very charming.
Yeah,
but they need to really stick to, like, is he going to have a problem with addiction? Is he not? Like, it's just so much jumping around with his character that right when I start buying into the fact that, like, he's really suffering from alcoholism, like, they're kind of like, oh, let's throw in a love story, and it's kind of like, but I was just getting used to this story arc that I kind of want to be in this world with him for a little bit so I can actually care. Mm-hmm. But then they jump back and forth. But it's very interesting that you had the same exact two characters that really kind of like make the show a little weaker. Rama, Anthony, you've never seen the show?
No. A lot of people were watching it in the first maybe 2 seasons. I felt like I was almost watching it from just the cooler talk, but it seems to have tapered off a little bit. I don't hear about it as much anymore.
So this was very ironic on this show. I don't know if anyone's noticed this episode. So, like, the weird thing is that majority of the stuff that either I or James talked about, I talked about, and he's seen, and vice versa. And then you two saw this stuff, and this was totally not planned out like this. Yeah, it's ironic that it happened that way.
I was just gonna say, if I may, I like "This Is Me," but that's a song. So that's about it.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
So, we got to end the show, but, we always end the show on a poll question. And I mean, I'm so like, I don't know what to ask this week. Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any suggestions of a good poll question to ask?
I think
maybe. Do you think AMC is going to? Do you think AMC will stick with their stance?
Okay, let's hear what James has to say.
I would. That was almost exactly what I was going to say. What do you think? Do you think this whole AMC Universal thing is going to stand the way it is now, or do you think they'll come to some sort of agreement? I'm not sure how you phrase that in a poll question, but yeah, I think that's the pressing issue right now. So yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, that was great. We'll post that on Twitter later on today. I just want to thank all of you for being on the show. Let's just go around one more time very quickly, just like where everyone can find you on social, on YouTube, on your outlets, whatever. We'll start with Anthony.
Yeah, you guys, thanks for, first off, thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate it. Looking forward to a lot more of these conversations, but you guys can find me on the Silver Screen Analysis website. You can find me at Silver Screen Analysis on YouTube and on Facebook. And then you can find me at Your Cinema Guy on Twitter and IG.
Okay. And Rama?
And yes, thank you so much for having me as well. This was fun. And you can find me at youtube.com/ramascreen1 and follow me at twitter.com/ramascreen.
Awesome. And you, James?
And you can find most of my work at the Empire Magazine website, which is www.empireonline.com. And on Twitter, that's at Empire Magazine. And personally, I can be found at Jam White. For my usual ramblings and a lot of cat pictures because, hey, it's the internet. So, yeah.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the other Scott M. You can go over to weliveentertainment.com if you want to read some of my written work. Wow, that was a flub. My interviews, my reviews. You can check them out over there. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for doing this episode. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
You guys.
See you later. Thank you.
Thanks.